Okay, let's get into it. Today, we are diving deep into a concept that, well, if you just take the literal meaning, it sounds less like biology and more like something from a sci-fi horror flick. Self-eating. Welcome to the deep dive.
It really does sound dramatic, doesn't it? But we're talking about autophagy, which is straight from the Greek for self-eating, and honestly, far from being scary, it's this incredibly well-controlled, essential process happening inside, well, every single one of your cells, keeping things running.
That's the key, isn't it? The name's just flashy.
Yeah.
Underneath, it's fundamental to, how long we live and how healthy we stay.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to really unpack what this cellular recycling thing is. Why does it matter so much for aging, for chronic diseases, especially the metabolic ones?
Right.
And maybe most importantly, how our lifestyle choices, things like diet and hormones, particularly insulin, how they basically control when this cleanup crew actually shows up for work.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Think of autophagy as the cell's own internal sanitation department and recycling plant, all rolled into one.
Okay.
It tidies up, clears out damaged bits and waste products, and by doing that, it keeps the cell healthy, functioning properly. It's really the cell's core strategy for, well, survival and just basic maintenance.
I like that picture of the cell as its own little resource manager.
Mm.
So when we say the cell eats things, it's very specific, very targeted dismantling, right?
Yeah.
Not just random destruction.
Precisely. It's highly controlled. This isn't some kind of desperate starvation response. It's a normal life-sustaining activity. The cell knows exactly what to target.
And what does it target?
Components that are basically past their prime, or things that would actually be harmful if they were just left hanging around and accumulating.
Okay, give us some examples. What kind of cellular junk are we talking about?
Well, things like mitochondria, the powerhouses that aren't making energy efficiently anymore. Maybe they're even spewing out damaging free radicals instead.
Yeah.
The cell also goes after old ribosomes, the protein factories, and crucially, misfolded proteins or proteins that have clumped together, aggregates.
Misfolded proteins seem like a really big deal, especially when you think about certain diseases.
Oh, absolutely. They are a huge problem. These clumps can build up, especially in really active tissues like, say, the brain. And if they aren't cleared out efficiently, they become toxic. They really contribute to tissue damage and dysfunction over time.
So this waste gets collected up, and then it's sent off to the central processing plant, the recycling center.
Exactly. That's the lysosome. Think of it as a bag full of really powerful enzymes, almost like cellular acid, designed to break down all that collected waste into its most basic components.
Okay.
But here's the really clever part. It's not just about getting rid of trash. It's about resource recovery.
So they don't just bin it. They salvage what they can.
Exactly right. The cell reclaims those fundamental building blocks. Amino acids from the proteins, fatty acids from the fats. It basically creates this internal stockpile of reusable materials it can use right away.
That makes so much sense from an efficiency standpoint.
Yeah.
So the cell can either use those bits to build new working parts,
Right, new molecules, new organelles.
or it can just burn them for fuel immediately.
Correct. Those fatty acids, for example, can go straight to the new healthy mitochondria to be burned for ATP, for energy. It's a really ingenious evolutionary trick, especially vital when, external nutrients might be scarce. Survival 101 for the cell.
Okay, so that explains why it's so critical at the cellular level. But now let's zoom out. How does this microscopic cleanup job connect to the big picture for us? Things like aging, chronic disease.
Yeah. This is where it gets really compelling, I think.
The connection is absolutely profound. Autophagy is basically fundamental quality control for us complex organisms.
Right.
If you can consistently prevent the buildup of damaged, toxic stuff inside cells, you are directly fighting against that gradual decline, that dysfunction we just call aging.
And when that cleanup system starts to fail, that's when the trouble really starts.
That's when chronic conditions often take hold. The evidence linking faulty autophagy to neurodegenerative diseases is particularly strong.
Like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Exactly. The failure to clear out those toxic protein clumps, things like amyloid beta in brain cells, seems to be a direct contributor to how those diseases progress. There's also research looking into benefits for heart health, like potentially clearing out debris that hardens arteries, atherosclerosis.
But the link that always surprises me is the one to metabolic syndrome, to obesity, type 2 diabetes. You don't usually think cellular housekeeping when you think about those conditions.
No, you don't. And this is a really fascinating insight, mostly coming from animal studies, especially in mice. What the research suggests is that when too much fat builds up in fat tissue, in the adipose cells.
Yeah.
It doesn't just sit there passively. It seems to directly interfere with, to mess up the autophagy process inside those very fat cells.
Wow. So the fat tissue itself gets too cluttered, and it can't clean itself properly. What happens then?
Well, when researchers deliberately blocked autophagy just in the fat tissue of obese mice, they saw a really significant quick spike in inflammation right there in the fat tissue.
And we know that inflammation in fat tissue is bad news metabolically, right? It's a trigger for insulin resistance.
Precisely. It's considered a key driver of systemic insulin resistance and all the problems that follow. So it suggests that the fat cells failing to clean themselves isn't just a side effect of being obese. It might actually be causing some of the metabolic chaos.
That's a huge shift in thinking. So if you fix the cleaning system...
That's what they did next. When they restored normal autophagy function in those fat cells, the inflammation went down, the fat tissue started working better, and importantly, the whole mouse became more sensitive to insulin.
Okay.
It really points to the idea that keeping that cellular recycling going in fat tissue is critical for metabolic health.
But the big question always is, does this hold up in humans? Is it that clear-cut for us?
Well, human research is, as usual, trickier, more complex, more ambiguous sometimes. We can measure markers related to autophagy in human fat tissue, especially that risky visceral fat in people with obesity.
And what do we see?
We definitely see changes in those markers, but figuring out exactly what those changes mean is still debated. Is it the cells trying really hard but failing to clean up an overwhelming mess? Or is it a sign the cleaning process itself is fundamentally broken and actually contributing to the problem?
So, the mechanism seems plausible, strongly suggested by the animal work, but the human picture needs more focus.
Exactly. We need more human-specific insight to be certain.
Okay, so if keeping this cleanup process functional is so important, what controls it? What's the master switch that tells the cell, okay, stop building for a minute, time for a deep clean?
The number one player here, the key regulator, is the hormone insulin.
Insulin, okay.
When your insulin levels go up significantly, like after you eat protein or carbs, it basically shouts abundance to your cells.
The resources are here.
Right. We're fed, nutrients are flowing in, and this signal activates something called MTO. Think of MTO as the cell's construction foreman.
MTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin. That's the signal for growth, building, storing energy.
You got it. When insulin flicks on the MTOR switch, the cell goes straight into build mode. Anabolism, synthesis. It prioritizes making new things, growing, storing fuel.
And here's the conflict, right? If the construction foreman is busy putting up new walls,
the cleanup crew has to stand down. Exactly. When MTR is active, autophagy gets suppressed. It just wouldn't make sense biologically for a cell to be tearing down structures while it's simultaneously trying to build new ones. You can't efficiently maximize both at once.
So let's connect the dots. Think about a typical modern diet. Maybe lots of processed carbs, frequent snacking. This can lead to chronically high insulin levels or insulin resistance,
Yes.
which means chronic MTR activation.
And therefore chronic suppression of autophagy. This is probably one of the most critical yet often overlooked factors in public health today. Because that chronic suppression means damaged parts just don't get cleared out efficiently. They accumulate. This speeds up cellular aging and, fundamentally, contributes to the development of many chronic diseases. The body needs to cycle, build, then clean, growth, then repair. When one dominates all the time, things go wrong.
Which leads us nicely into what we can actually do about it. If high insulin acts like a brake on autophagy,
then lowering insulin consistently should release that brake.
okay?
That's the basic principle. Strategies that avoid big, frequent insulin spikes, things like intermittent fasting, maybe time-restricted eating, or certainly low-carb and ketogenic diets, they create the right metabolic environment. Low insulin tells MTOR to quiet down, which allows autophagy to ramp up.
But here's where it gets even more interesting based on the sources. It's not just about taking the foot off the brake. The very things produced during fasting or keto, the ketones themselves seem to act like an accelerator pedal for the cleanup.
Yes, this is a really cool part of the story. Ketone bodies, especially the main one, beta-hydroxybutyrate or BHB, we usually just think of them as alternative brain fuel.
Right.
But they're more than just fuel. They act as signaling molecules. And it appears they directly stimulate and enhance the autophagy process itself.
So low insulin gets the construction foreman off the site, but then VHB comes along and basically gives the cleanup crew a performance boost. better tools, maybe?
That's a fantastic analogy, and there's even some suggestion that BHB might be particularly good at helping the lysosomes dissolve and clear out those really stubborn, misfolded proteins, the ones linked to neurodegeneration, like a specialized solvent for the toughest grime.
Wow, okay, so it's a potential 1-2 punch. Lower insulin permits cleaning, BHB enhances it. Sounds amazing for health and aging. But we have to talk about balance, right? Is the goal just max autophagy all the time? Is constant breakdown, constant catabolism actually bad?
That's the crucial caveat, absolutely. Nonstop breakdown without periods of building anabolism would be disastrous. You'd lose functional tissue. Think about muscle mass, for instance.
Right.
You need those cycles. Build, repair, clean. Build, repair, clean.
And we see the potential dangers of pushing it too hard with things like drugs, right? Like rapamycin, which people talk about for longevity.
Rapamycin is the classic example. It's literally named because it inhibits mTOR mechanistic target of rapamycin. So yes, it strongly activates autophagy. But trying to use it just for extending life in healthy people is, frankly, risky.
Why? What's the downside?
Because it hits mTOR systemically and chronically. It suppresses the immune system, that's actually why it's used medically, to prevent organ transplant rejection.
Okay.
But for general health, that's not ideal. And importantly, it interferes with muscle growth and repair, especially after exercise. You might get cleaner cells, but you potentially sacrifice strength, immune function, healing. The body's natural rhythm is much smarter, much safer than just slamming the autophagy pedal with a drug.
So the real goal is to support the body's own natural cycles, not force one extreme. And the body must have ways to protect muscle even when insulin is low and autophagy is potentially active.
It definitely does. Even when insulin is low, say during fasting or keto, other hormones like growth hormone and IGF-1 are still around and can help maintain muscle. But maybe the most important factor we control is protein intake.
Okay, tell me about protein. If you're eating, say, a high-protein keto diet, protein itself can nudge insulin a bit, and amino acids can trigger mTOR, right? Doesn't that shut down the autophagy we're trying to encourage?
That's a really good point, and it highlights the elegance of the system. Yes, amino acids from protein can activate mTOR, but this activation tends to be more localized, more acute, especially around meal times or after exercise.
Meaning it doesn't just switch everything off systemically for hours.
Exactly. Having adequate protein allows your muscles to repair and synthesize new protein when they need it, like after a workout. It temporarily suppresses the cleanup in those tissues right when building is the priority. But it doesn't necessarily cancel out the overall systemic benefit of keeping insulin generally low the rest of the time.
Okay, so you get the best of both worlds. Localized building where needed, but still benefiting from the systemic low insulin state, promoting general cleanup.
That's the balance the body strikes. It allows you to maintain or even build important tissues like muscle, while still leveraging periods of lower insulin for that essential cellular housekeeping. They can coexist beautifully through cycling.
It really paints a picture of this elegant, dynamic system. We could use diet as a tool to encourage the cleaning cycle, but strategic protein intake makes sure we're always ready to rebuild and stay strong.
Yeah, the big takeaway really is that optimal health and longevity aren't about pushing autophagy to the max 24/7. It's about supporting your body's natural ability to cycle efficiently between robust cleaning phases and essential building phases.
Okay, let's quickly recap the key takeaways for everyone listening. First, autophagy. It's a vital cellular recycling. Keeps cells healthy, stops age-related junk from building up.
Second, it's tightly controlled by your metabolism, mainly insulin. High insulin hits the brakes via mTOR, the build signal. Low insulin releases the brake, lets the cleanup happen.
Third, things like fasting or low-carb keto diets can really kickstart autophagy, partly by keeping insulin low, but also because ketones, like BHB, seem to directly boost the process, a catalyst effect.
And fourth, crucially, the goal isn't non-stop breakdown. It's about supporting the body's natural rhythm of cleaning and building. Using lifestyle wisely, not forcing things with risky interventions, balance is key.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Since this whole autophagy process is so intimately tied to our individual metabolism, our personal history with insulin, doesn't that just scream for a more personalized approach to health?
Absolutely.
Imagine, fine-tuning your eating patterns, your fasting, maybe even your protein timing, based on real data about your unique metabolism, optimizing your cellular cleanup crew.
That really feels like the future, doesn't it? Moving beyond one-size-fits-all advice and actually working with our body's incredibly powerful built-in mechanisms for healing and healthy aging.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cellular self-eating. Hopefully you feel a bit more clued into the amazing, complex work happening inside you right now.